Hey, and welcome to the Grumpy Sound Guy Show. I am your host, Mr. J.R. Everhart from CLP Audio and Staging. Tonight, we are going to talk about in-ear monitor mixers. We did a short on this yesterday. Kind of blew up. A lot of people had a lot of things to say about it. So I thought I would do a longer format kind of video on this and give you guys kind of just elaborate a little bit more on why I see the mixers in my market that I see and why people are choosing these specific mixers over those specific mixers. We're going to cover the whole, bingo card of mixers that I see people using to mix their own in-ear monitor setup on stage. This is a scenario where you have a split snake and the band is using that mixer to control their ear mixes. Everybody's usually on their phone controlling their mix. So stick around. You don't want to miss a second of today's show. Hey guys, if I could just have a moment of your time to talk to you about this channel. 49.8% of you guys watching this right now is not subscribed to this channel. Will you please hit that subscription button? It doesn't cost anything to subscribe to the channel on the public side here. And then that gives us tools and resources and for my marketing team to be able to do what we need to do to get this content out to people who really enjoy this sort of thing. The other thing is, if you're super digging this and you'd like a deeper look into my world, then subscribe to the paid side of the YouTube channel. You can join for about the cost of a cup of coffee a month, and then I do vlogs over there. I post content that never goes public, and I let you into my world. I let you into the CLP audio world, and I let you see what our day-to-day life looks like. Love you guys. Thank you for the support. Okay, welcome back. Welcome back. So, in-ear monitor mixers. Anytime we do content on in-ear monitors, it's always a hot button subject because people are just kind of all over the map about this. Here, I guess let me just let that cat out of the bag, okay? Let me just bust some of you old school cats' bubbles and just tell you what the future is going to look like. The future is going to be in-ear monitors, okay? It's always going to go in that direction. It's a technology that is getting better and better every year. It's getting more and more economical every year. None of it is really super cheap, although there's some cheap alternatives out there, especially with some of the Chinese companies that are coming to the table, like with KZ earbuds and XIve, is a brand. Phoenix Pro is another brand that's offering some stuff. Behringer actually has some really cool wired setups for like drummers or bass players that don't move around much. But you still have all the normal heavyweights like Sennheiser and Shure and all those guys that are really kind of ruling the pro touring roost as far as that's concerned. But today, it's just all about mixers. So I did a short yesterday on this and the comments section just went ballistic. So I thought that I would come back to the table and do a long form video on this, a long format video on this, and kind of just get you guys a little better framework as to why I was speaking about those specific mixers that I spoke about in yesterday's short. I specifically left out X32 rack because I know that is probably the national standard when it comes to in-ear monitor mixer. There's probably more X32 racks controlling people's ears this week on stages than there is any other mixer. But I intentionally left that out of the short yesterday because I wanted to see how many local people would come to, or at least my regional people would come to the comment section and say, hey, we're using X32 rack, because I don't see a lot of those. I do see them, don't get me wrong, and when I'm out freelancing with my Pro Touring guys, all those cats are using either an M32C and DL32 setup for their ears, which I see most of the Pro Touring guys using, or they're using an X32 rack if they're a band that is small enough to fit into that 16-channel framework. The reason I mentioned Soundcraft UI24, the Behringer XR18, what other mixers did we talk about? The DL Mackie line, like the DL32 or the DL16. These are all rack mixers controlled with an iPad or your cell phone. Even the Presonus 32R rack mixer. I know a couple bands right off the top of my head right now that are using those, and they're happy with them. You know, I can understand that with Presonus because their app is pretty user-friendly. I use Mixing Station on all of those consoles because it's made to work on all those consoles, and that makes all those consoles feel like the same console to me. Some have little twists and turns here or there, and you know, that sort of thing. But for the most part, Mixing Station works really well across all those formats. So if you're a sound engineer who works across all those different consoles, I would highly suggest buying Mixing Station and then buying the licensing for all the different consoles that it offers in your ecosystem of consoles that you tend to work with. Because it's like, I think you pay like, I don't even know what it costs anymore. I've had Mixing Station for so long, I'm completely out of touch with what it costs now. I think when I got it, it was about 12 bucks or something in the App Store, and you got everything, you know, and then 2 or 3 updates later, they allowed me to have like the XM32, because that's what I use most, but then I had to buy licensing for everything else. And because I'm someone who does work on a lot of UIs and a lot of those XR mixers, you know, I went ahead and I actually just bought licensing on all of them, even the Yamaha TF stuff, so Allen and Heath, you know, that sort of thing. So yeah, so what I see the most of in my area in the middle market is the Soundcraft UI24, and this is why. First of all, for about the same price as an X32 rack, or in some cases, 150 bucks cheaper, you can get 20 XLR input channels versus 16. For some bands, that's a game changer right there. You know, having those extra 4 channels makes a huge difference, especially when you're running tracks, you know, and stuff like that. Or maybe you're the drummer in the band and you could never fit more than like kick, snare, and hat, you know, in your ear mix. Now you can add the toms or a couple overheads or a room mic, you know, or something like that. It just gives you a lot more flexibility for the same price. You know, you just got more channels to deal with. And that is a big selling point for a lot of bands. The other thing is Soundcraft is owned by Harman, which owns JBL, DBX, Lexicon. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. You know, those guys, they have a Crown, they own Crown. They have a laundry list of companies that all us analog guys used to have our outboard racks full of. Like, you know, I had those 160 compressor, DBX compressors was the shiznit, dude. Like, it was the compressor to have. I used all their, like the 266 gates for drums, used DBX, you know, 2-channel 3rd octave EQs on all the monitors in front of house. Lexicon, I think they own TC Electronics too. We did all Lexicon reverb and then TC Electronics like delay and stuff like that. That was all outboard stuff. Now it's all in the UI. Like the UI has Lexicon reverbs. I think the UI, and this may like blow some of your all's minds, but I think the UI has a better reverb than what my M32 does. I honestly do. I was never a huge fan of Clark Techniques, even in the studio days, even in the old analog days. I thought they were cool, don't get me wrong, and they made a couple things that were stellar. But when it translated over into the digital world, something happened, dude, because They put the Clark Techniques name on it, but it don't sound Clark Techniques to me. It just doesn't, you know. Now, I think the M32 has a better delay than the UI, so pick your poison. They both have verb and delay. One does verb better, the other does delay better. The reality of it is none of my clients or the audience is ever complaining about verb or delay, so it's kind of a moot point at that point, you know what I mean? But yeah, so you have the lexicon, you know, reverbs in there that sound like $1 million, DBX compression, DBX EQs, DBX gates, you know, I mean, that's stuff that, you know, it kind of means something. And when I listen to those components in the UI, no, the compressor does not sound like an old 160, okay? But it's a distant second, you know? And in the world of middle market, you know, sub $1,500 mixers, I think that's saying something. I think that has some value. The other mixer I see probably number 2 in popularity in my specific area would be the XR18, mainly because of the price point. It's 16 XLR inputs. You got a couple other 1/4-inch inputs there that you could use for a click, or you could use for backing tracks if you had to. You know, it does give you 2 more channels there to mess with, or USB in, I think there's something else going on there with that. Same thing with the UI. The UI24 is 24 channels. It just has 20 XLR inputs. The rest of it is 1/4-inch inputs, and they're counting USB playback inputs and stuff like that. The other thing on the UI I didn't mention is it has Digitech guitar processing built into the mixer. So let's say you're a singer-songwriter and want to kind of add some Digitech effects to your acoustic guitar. It has an XLR 1/4-inch combo plugs on those channels, and you can plug your guitar right into that, and it's like having a DBX stomp box or something. Or I mean a Digitech stomp box. I'm sorry, I said DBX, I meant Digitech. Too many things. Harman owns everybody and their mother, so it's just too many things going on there for me to keep up with. Plus, I'm a drummer, dude. You know, what do I know about Digitech and guitars and stuff? I mean, really. Said every guitar player I've ever worked with. Yeah, so the XR18, man, we see a lot of those. My beef with the XR18 is it's a scaled down X32. The EQs and the compressors kind of start feeling Presonus-ish, if you know what I'm saying. You know, they're not quite as sensitive as what they are on the X32, M32, you know, setup. I don't really have any complaints about the mic pre's. I have seen a bunch of them fail. You know, I have seen guys lose channels on the XR, the XR, you know, series mixers. That's why I would still, you know, recommend that you get the MR, the Midas version, because it has all Nutrix connectors, and it's just a better build. It's like the difference between the X32 and the M32. They don't necessarily sound different. You know, it's a better build. It's going to last longer. So you pay a couple $100 extra bucks, you know, for the Midas stuff, and it lasts longer. You know, that means something in my world. But nevertheless, I digress. You know, you use what you want to use, because you XR guys or XR guys it's like a freaking cult. You guys will attack me with, you know, K9s, helicopters, and CNN reporters because I talk smack about your mixer. I have one right behind me, behind that Intimidator box, is a little XR mixer that was just given to me a couple days ago, and I was like, oh, cool, check this out. And we will put it to use. I'm not a hater, okay? But I call things as I see them. And they are a mixer that has had issues. I had a buddy of mine, DJ buddy of mine, who had a XR18 and couldn't get any of the networking to work on it. It was just dead. The network plug was shot. You couldn't get any parts for it. That's the other thing about the Behringer stuff. Don't buy Behringer unless you're ready to understand and accept the fact that it's a disposable piece of equipment. You're going to really, really struggle to find anybody who's going to service it or to find parts for it or any of that kind of stuff. When it quits working, throw it away and buy another one. That's why they cost what they cost. They're disposable. It's like a razor. You know, you can milk a razor for, you know, a month, sometimes 2 months if you're, you know, a lumberjack or something. But sooner or later, you know that that razor is disposable. You're going to throw it away and put another one on there. You know, it's the same way with some of these middle market mixers. X32 is the exact same way. You know, I had a guy ask me just the other day about buying pieces and parts for an X32, and I said I wouldn't waste the money. I just wouldn't. You know, I would donate it, you know, or throw it away, or, you know, just go buy another mixer. Because by the time you factor in, if you can find parts, because Behringer pretty much just abandoned North America like 3-4 years ago. They just did. There's no support for, you know, X32 and M32 in North America outside of Sweetwater offers some repair support. There's a place in Vegas that's an authorized repair shop that offers support. That's it. I mean, if you can find your local electronics shop that will open them up. I've been inside of X and M32s. I've been inside of the XRs. You know, and I'm telling you, the XR, all that Behringer stuff, man, it's not made that great. It just isn't. It's made for exactly what you pay for it. Okay? That includes the X32 rack that everybody is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs with. I own one. Again, behind me, on the other side of that Intimidator box, is a rack that has a X32 rack. When they dropped the price, you know, back in the fall to, what was it, like $900, I think is what I paid for it new. I bought an X32 rack, and then I already had a DL32 stage box to go with it. And that's what that setup is. It's X32 rack with a Midas stage box. But, you know, the reality of it is it's cheap for a reason. You get what you pay for, guys. You know, Presonus, for all of their, and I did a Presonus video just a week or two ago that, you know, really brought the haters out. It also brought out a whole lot of people that still has PTSD from running Presonus Studio Live consoles. For all their nonsense, you know, I think they may have finally gotten their stuff together. And, you know, that 32R rack mixer, man, I know a couple guys that are using them, and they have no complaints whatsoever, none. They haven't had any catastrophic failures. I had one guy in the comment section said that he had one that took a dump on him, so there was one. So I can say there's been one guy say that he had an issue with it. Look, everybody who makes this equipment, a turd floats out the back door at some point, you know. We're all susceptible to the lemon, you know. But I haven't seen, like I did in previous generations of Presonus, like epic tsunami type, you know, level failures coming at me, you know. I know 3 or 4 different guys using those rack mixers right this weekend, and they're super happy with it, and it's doing everything they want them to do. I was mixing on one. I was actually at, my girlfriend and I went out and seen a buddy of mine who runs sound for a local band, and he's using one of these, and he kind of handed me the iPad, so I was able to kind of nose around it a little bit or whatever. But I still didn't feel like that the EQs and the compressors and stuff was really all that. I'm told that you can buy an extra, I guess, plug-in suite of fat channel stuff for the Presonus. It makes no sense to me why you just wouldn't include that in the mixer, especially for the price that you charge for them. But hey, man, you know, whatever. You Presonus guys figure it out. But that's what I see guys using. You know, some guys will complain about the UI24 not being real user friendly. Dude, it is definitely a different animal. You know, it is set up, the workflow is way different. You don't download an app, you're actually just browsing on the internal browser of the mixer itself. So, I mean, it kind of looks like an app once you get it up in front of you, but you're connecting to the mixer through Safari, and you're going to the mixer's address, and then there the whole control surface pops up on your iPad. But yeah, the way they do gain structure in that thing is radically different than an M or X32 or any of these other ones. Another one that I would like to see more of, but don't, is that CQ Allen and Heath. What is it, CQ18 or something that just came out last year? I was just telling one of my followers earlier today that I wish they would have come out with a 32 channel version of that. I probably would have bought one, because it's 96K. You know, at least that's what the follower was saying. I didn't realize it was 96K. I thought it was still 48, but apparently it's 96K. Not the SQ rack, but I really think the SQ rack is going to take off. The SQ rack is probably going to bump out all the X32s that are in Pro Touring world. It's going to be SQ rack or the Behringer wing. There's already a bunch of guys that went from X32 rack to the Behringer wing as soon as it was released. But I honestly think the SQ rack is a better mixer. I just wish they would have put more in-out on it. That's my biggest complaint. If that SQ rack would have been 32 by 16, I would have one in my possession right now. Yes, sir. And I would have started moving in that direction, you know. But, you know, I've heard some guys complain about the SQ, you know, that there was things about it they didn't like, you know, that there's workflow issues, and they didn't think it was as responsive as maybe some of the other mixers they've worked on. Hey, to each is his own, you know. You do you, boo. I'm not mad at you. You know, I'm an M32 guy, you know, and I'm an M32 guy because I think it's the most bang for the buck. It's a workhorse of a console. It's very capable of doing everything that I needed to do. I've never been in a situation where I could not get that mixer to do what I wanted it to do. Boom, end of story. If I was putting together an ear rig for my band specifically, it'd probably be this X32 rack with Midas stage box back here, because that's like a C-rig setup, you know, or I would just use one of my M32C DL32 setups, and that's what I would use, because I just like the workflow, and, you know, like I said, it's a workhorse. My M32C DL32 and my A-rig I have had for about 6 years now, maybe, let's see, 5, I don't want to lie to you. I think about 6 years, 6.5 years. It's got well over 1,000 shows on it, probably 1,300 shows on it. And, you know, knock on wood, it hasn't given me one problem ever, you know, and it's still cooking. It's still in my A-rig. In fact, I was going to swap it out for what I have 3 of those setups, and then right here behind me in that case right there is a M32 Live. I was going to swap out the A-rig with the C-rig because it's the newest M32 DL32 setup, and just kind of, you know, balance out the mileage on my mixers, you know. But now I'm just kind of like, man, I want to see like maybe how far I can push this thing, and just how many shows I can get out of it, you know. So yeah, so I'll keep you updated on that as it develops. But yeah, man, that's the deal. I mean, it's really about workflow. You know, it's about features. You know, if you want a nice, you know, fat reverb in your ears while you're playing, especially on your vocals and stuff, and the UI gives you all that capability, you know, and that sort of thing. So does the others. You know, I'm not a hater on any of them. I like an X32 rack. You know, I don't have any issue with it. You know, I like the workflow. You know, I can fire up my mixing station app and boom, there it is. So yeah, so I mean, you hit me, bleep bloop 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 down in the comment section, and tell me what your favorite in-ear monitor mixer is and why. Was it price that led you in that direction? Was it channel count? Was it features such as like, you know, really good EQs, compressors, effects, you know, stuff like that? Was it workflow in terms of being able to network easily, you know, and that sort of thing? Let me just say too, I should probably really add this to the whole conversation. Most of these mixers we're talking about have built-in routers in them. We don't ever use those, ever. None of my clients, no one that I know that's using this stuff, no one uses those built-in routers. The UI has it. The XR Behringer stuff has that. The Presonus does not. The X32 rack does not. I'm trying to think if the Allen and Heath has it or not. I'm not that familiar with that CQ, but we never use the onboard router. We just don't. We may use it to set up an external router, but typically in my world, what I do is use an external router with an access point. You know, so I'm coming off, I have a router in the back of the rack with the mixer, and then I run that out to an access point that goes up on a mic stand about, you know, 8 feet in the air, 10 feet in the air, and that gives me a lot more coverage in the room. And we always use 5G when we're doing that. 5G, guys. Get away from 2.4. And that's the reason why we don't use the internal routers on these mixers, because they're all 2.4. 2.4 is the same thing that every phone and iPad on stage and in the audience and the house Wi-Fi, it's all running on 2.4. So if you use an external router, turn off the radio signal for 2.4 and just use the 5G, you'll find that your connection issues will go away and it'll be much more responsive. Now remember this, 5G does not go through walls all that great. So if you're trying to mount this thing and then run it from another room, you're going to need to use 2.4 and just try to scan for a channel, you know, an open channel. There's like 30 or 40 some channels in that bandwidth that you can, you know, get on the router and manually scan, or sometimes you can just do an auto scan on the router itself to get an open frequency. But that's a couple more extra steps into the world of IT that all audio guys hate. So it's easier just to use 5G. But again, like if the mixer is, let's say you're in a church situation and the mixer's on stage and you're behind the front of house booth in an ISO room where you're doing audio to video, like for live stream or something like that, and you're all using the same mixer, you may find that it will be better if you just network hardwire to that router where the mixer's at, than to try to connect with 2.4 or 5G. Because most of those buildings, when they're built that way, they're running, they're running, you know, Ethernet, you know, routing anyways all over the place. Just have them pull one, you know, or a couple from the stage up to the tech booth and then back into the audio to video, you know, room. So then you can just be hardwired to the mixer at that point. And that gives you some independent control over what you're doing there with whatever aux or matrix that you're using to feed audio to your video stream. So there you go. There is a whole bunch of in-ear monitor mixer conversation. Again, please hit me up in the comments and let me know your feelings about this, what you're using, why you're using it. And if you feel like I missed something, I didn't mention the Yamaha TF stuff. I don't really know a lot about them because I only know one guy that uses that stuff, you know, and I know 2 or 3 clubs that had it in their club and they yanked them out and put M32s in there. And I had no influence over that decision. They did it all on their own. It's just kind of, the M32 is an industry standard. Everybody's got show files on their keychain, you know, they're traveling with, and it just makes life a lot easier when everybody's, you know, kind of, you know, prepared to work in the same ecosystem. So I don't know a whole bunch of guys that are using, you know, any of the Yamaha stuff. I know one guy that uses a TF rack. He seems to like it. He never complains about it. So I am assuming that it is solid as a rock and that it's fairly user-friendly and can do everything all these other mixers can do. Again, sometimes for me personally, it's always about sound quality, durability first. Durability is huge. And then workflow. I don't care for the workflow in a TF. I don't care for the workflow in an LS9. You know what I mean? It's just, you're having to dig through layers to get the stuff, and it's just, you know, it could be done so much better. And they did do it better later on, especially on the pro touring, you know, side of things. But yeah, man. So that's the deal. Love you guys. See you next week.